Hello everyone, this is Naim from Zeevou, and today I'm going to be talking about why you could still be losing money, although you might be 80% occupied. And I'm not just talking about losing revenue, but actually losing profit. So it's extremely important to think about your bottom line, you're running a business, and it can be very easy to slide into this idea of I'm just maximizing my revenue, especially if you're a property manager and you're managing for other owners. Now, I understand that the focus on baseline profit is not as important to your business in the short term if you are managing for other people rather than owning the property or doing arbitrage or rent to rent. But the reality is that the profitability of people that you manage for is very much part of the health of your business overall. So if your owners are losing money or not making as much money as they could, it is an open market, it's a free market, you might find sooner rather than later that you lose those owners, and before you know it, you've lost your business. So you need to really make sure that when you're pricing, you're taking into account everything that you should, and you're not underpricing yourself, and you're not running the property at a loss. So obviously, if you're managing, you always make a cut. Yes, the higher you sell for, the more you make. And actually, there's an argument to say that there could be some sort of a conflict of interest, because for you, it's just about revenue maximization and filling, as many nights at pretty much whatever price, so long as you're getting something, because, anything you get is more than nothing. Whereas from the owner's point of view, obviously they need to cover their base costs. They need to pay for your commission. They need to pay for the OTA commission. They might need to pay for payment processing fees and cleaning fees before they can make any money at all, which they then will be taxed on, and so on and so forth. So it's crucial to make sure that you're being fair to owners that you're managing for if you want to build a sustainable long-term business and get referrals from your owners to other potential owners to manage for. And I'll say no more if the property is your own or you're renting the property and then subletting it. It's clear as daylight that you need to really be focused on your profit. So one of the problems is that often people think about increasing their occupancy rate, getting more bookings in, getting more nights sold, and that can sort of mask a number of issues within the business. So one of those could be, for example, the excessive dependency on OTAs. So I always encourage people to work with OTAs as they're a good source of bookings. I also say that they should only be serving your business. You shouldn't be working for them. So it's a good way to get leads, but you then need to work on those leads and that convert into large bookings in the longer run. And working too much with OTAs obviously means that there's also high commissions to be paid, which again is money that could be in your pocket and the property owner's pocket, or it could be a discount case that then encourages more bookings directly with you in the future. Something else that can be tricky to get your head around is how to optimize your minimum and maximum lengths of stay and ensure that you're not just filling the calendar with lots of short and bookings and actually not making a profit, just adding a lot of overhead in terms of managing all those bookings and also adding to the wear and tear at the property. So one of the things that you need to make sure is when looking at your profitability is actually maximizing your top line figures. So yes, increasing the amount that you can charge per night or the revenue that you have per available night. So the price of which you sell is obviously crucial. However, having said that, you need to look at each booking that you're aiming to get and how much you would make from that booking in terms of profit. So I'll talk about how to work that out a bit later on in more detail. But I just wanted to flag at this point that there's a number of points that you need to be aware of and bear in mind when running a business and looking at profit optimization. So one of them is the cost of underpricing. If you are dropping your rates too much, not only will you lose out on direct revenue, it also means you might attract the wrong crowd. Now, attracting the wrong crowd means a number of things. One of them could be they actually don't respect your property as much. They might be people looking for a cheap getaway. They might not care as much, whereas you'll find often the higher paying clients are actually a lot more respectful of your property. People who pay less often also expect more for their money, because for them it could be a larger sacrifice to actually go on holiday or to pay for the accommodation wherever it is that they're visiting. Whereas people who have more money tend to not feel the pain of paying for the accommodation as much. And this, unfortunately, also reflects directly in the reviews that you get. So a small issue that might occur, for example, say the cleaner forgot to put enough toilet paper in the bathroom for a guest who's staying for 2 or 3 weeks. If someone's not paid what you could have got for that unit, and you've attracted someone who's really on a budget, then for them that'll be a huge issue, because not only is there no toilet paper, but they need to dish out an extra amount of money, which to them might feel like it's really unfair and considerable amount of money compared to what they pay for the accommodation, and that will show in their review of your property. Whereas someone who's paid a decent amount for the booking and finds that they're out of toilet paper at some point, they'll probably just nip into the store, buy some more, and they'll never even come up in the review. So underpricing can carry huge costs. And if you've got multiple units in the same building, like your hotel or a guest house and a part hotel, it could also lead to issues like people making a lot of noise, not being respectful of neighbors at night, people smoking, drinking too much, substance abuse, all sorts of issues which you can easily avoid by ensuring that the pricing is correct. Now, I understand that it sometimes feels painful to look at an empty calendar, but an empty calendar can actually be cheaper than the wrong guests in your property, because that can cost you more than they bring in. Another thing that you need to be careful of is if you're doing your pricing manually. It can be very easy, especially if you're managing a large number of properties, or you've got stock involved in setting prices, to set the wrong price for the wrong date for the wrong property, either inadvertently or because one of your assumptions is wrong, or you're not using tech to marry up your central calendar with different listing sites, and you're using iCal to sync it across, and then you need to go into different websites and put the price in, and then you forget to change one, forget to change the other one, and so on and so forth. And the other thing that is very important is actually controlling the length of stay, and I'll talk about that a bit more when I get down to drilling down into how to maximize your profitability. And the other thing is missing upsell opportunities. So you need to be very cautious when looking at your profitability, to not assume that all your money is going to come from the accommodation. So obviously, accommodation is in a way a product that you're selling to the guests. But you need to remember that once you own that guest relationship, there's a lot more that you could sell to the guests, and your profit will probably come in a great part at the end of the day from what you're upselling to the guests, because the margins on accommodation are very slim, and it's the first thing that a guest will look at when booking. However, once you've caught the fish, there's different ways of frying it, and you want to make sure that you can maximize the profits for your business, and actually at the same time also offer added value to the guests to make their stay more enjoyable, to make their life easier. So this could include a variety of things like pickups from the airport, vouchers to local restaurants, city tours, special packages for birthdays, anniversaries, and so on. I'm sure you can all think of a number of things that you could upsell to your guests. And now that you're starting to think about those, let me just mention that you can also use tech to automate the upselling, irrespective of which channel people come from. So Zeevou has a number of tools that help with that, and you might want to take a look if you're not already using Zeevou, or if you are using Zeevou and you're not making usually upsells, you might want to take a look at our help articles on how to set those up and ensure that you're maximizing your profitability. Now I'm going to talk a bit about how you have to look at different parameters that directly contribute to the bottom line of the profitability of a unit, and also share a bit about my own experience and how over the years we've learned to improve our revenue management and focus on profitability more and more. So when looking at this, you obviously need to be aware of what I was mentioning earlier, and that while direct bookings are helpful, it is, in my opinion, very risky to rely solely on direct bookings. So you do want to have some OTA bookings in the mix. At the same time, you want to try and minimize your dependency on those OTA bookings, and especially the amount of revenue that you're getting from those bookings, because a commission is obviously paid on the revenue you get, but you might be able to get a guest through an OTA and then get them to extend to stay with you again, to book with you repeatedly, and so on. So you're really looking at your cost of acquisition through each channel, and you want to avoid both extremes, basically. You don't want too many OTA bookings, you don't want too few OTA bookings, or your calendar might just dry up unless you're really, really strong on SEO and other ways of getting leads into your website in the first place. So anytime that a booking comes in from an OTA, you want to sort of bombard the guests, I guess, with branding. I've just done another video on branding recently, so you might want to look that up if you want to learn more about how to build a brand that builds trust with guests and encourages them to book directly. But you also want to convey the benefits to the guests, like, they might save some money, or they might get some additional time at the property, like an early check-in or a late checkout, or they're booking correctly, or they might get a hamper bag on arrival, or whatever it is that you want to offer. So you want to make sure you've got a good balance there. And then one thing which is extremely important is your length of stay and how you manage your length of stay. So let me give you a couple of examples as to why you want to avoid short stays as much much as possible in most scenarios. You obviously have costs associated with turning over a property between bookings. And even if you charge cleaning fee to guests on top of the accommodation price, which, by the way, I'm not sure is the best thing to do, because once you start looking at trying to optimize your profits, you want to drive longer bookings. And if you drive longer bookings, you're probably offering something like a weekly key. And if you offer a weekly clean, you can't add, 2 or 3 amounts of clean on top of the price. So what I always recommend is, now that OTAs are showing the total price to the guests anyway and are charging commission on the total price, just forget about the cleaning fee, work it into your base price, and then you can use promotions to manage different pricing for different lengths of stay and ensure that by staying additional nights, you've actually got a higher base price rather than the lower base price plus a cleaning fee. And what that means is that if you're staying the second and third week, you've already got that extra margin in your pricing to pay for the additional cleaning that you'll do on a regular basis. So, as I was saying, one of the things is turnover costs that you have between bookings. So obviously, if you have to pay a cleaner once for a 1-night booking or for a 3-night booking or 4-night booking, well, guess what? At the same price, the 4-night booking would be more profitable. So it's no-brainer that you want to get the 4-night booking instead of the 1-night booking. Something else is that once you've got a booking in your calendar, you're blocking out availability and you're losing the potential of taking longer inquiries. So imagine a calendar, for a month, 30 days, and someone books a month ahead of time, bang in one night on 15th of the month on Saturday night. And all of a sudden, you've lost out on the 2-night booking for that weekend. You've lost out on a week-long booking. You've lost out on potential month-long booking or a 2 or 3-month booking. So you really don't want to be giving away short availability in your calendar until fairly late in the day. Now, luckily, a lot of people will book last minute, luckily or unluckily, but it means that you can't fill your calendar last minute with short-term bookings. And you want to be keeping as much availability open, although it feels risky while you're doing it, in months ahead to try and get those longer bookings. So how do you do this practically? So you'd set something called the minimum night stay. So you might want to start up by setting a 30-night or 14-night stay, say 6 months or more in advance, and then you drop that as you get closer to it. So say, 3 months in advance, you go from 30 nights to 14 nights, and then 1 month in advance, you go from 14 nights minimum to 7 nights minimum. And as you get closer and closer for the day, you drop down all the way to 1 night. And you can, of course, also manage your orphan nights using software like Zeevou or PriceLab or Beyond Pricing. Some of these offer various tools to manage your length of stay restrictions to fill gaps between these longer bookings. And then when you look at your profitability, you want to make sure that you're looking at the income that you're getting from these bookings, but also at the expenses. If you're managing for someone else, at this point, you need to completely forget about the fact that you're getting a cut here and that they're getting a cut. And you just need to look at the total the guest is paying and the total expenses that they are associated with servicing that booking. So you need to, as a first step, work out whether directly or through gathering information from your owner what the costs are. So these will, in most cases, include either mortgage or a rent. And then you'll have things like utility bills, electricity, gas, water, internet, so on and so forth, insurance. And some of these will be fixed costs. Some of these will be sort of variable costs depending on degree of use. And then you'll have direct costs per booking, should be things like the cleaning, which obviously you probably wouldn't do unless you had that booking, linen, consumables like toilet paper, soap, shampoo, and so on and so forth. And then on top of that, obviously there's some element of wear and tear, but that is extremely difficult to factor in. But even forgetting about wear and tear for now, you want to look at all these costs and you want to model out how much money you would make if a guest booked for a different number of nights. And yes, you might be using dynamic pricing, so rates might fluctuate. Just take an average price between your minimum and your maximum, which you think you can achieve in each season. And then once you've got that on a spreadsheet and you can look at the sort of figures that you'd make at different lengths of stay, you want to start building in promotions, discounts, right? So if someone stays more than nights, obviously your costs are lower and you want to pass that on. Because ultimately, if you can get your pricing to a point where your profit per night stays pretty much constant, regardless how long they stay, at that point, it's a matter of just filling the nights. But if you haven't got to that point, and you're just trying to fill nights regardless of how many nights people are staying, then you might end up shooting yourself in the foot. What you also need to make sure is that you've got a minimum and that minimum is very clear. So you do not want to be selling a night for less than all your costs. So your fixed costs plus your turnover costs plus your commission, payment processing fees, and the channel commission. So you need to work all of that out. And you don't want any bookings to be coming in for a night or for 2 nights or whatever you're calculating based on that are less than that. Because that means that although you might be making money as a property manager, the property owner and the investor who's financing the lease or depending on the setup, whatever it might be, will end up losing money. And as I was explaining earlier, for the long-term success of the business, it's not good enough to look at just maximizing your short-term income from management fees. You really do need to make sure that you're not taking what is essentially a loss-making booking. Now, when we started operating, we had a lot of short-term stays, so we were basically operating through apartments and part hotels, but pretty much like hotels. So we had 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights. I think our average length of stay was something like 2.2 nights. As time went by, I started to realize that we were losing a lot of inquiries for longer term bookings because we had all these short bookings, which were really a pain to deal with because you had to make sure the cleaners always showed up and you had to make sure that the keys between guests didn't get lost or stolen. They forgot to put them back. And this, that, and the other. And you all know about the hassles of short-term stays, I'm sure. Of course, they're also riskier. Neighbors get annoyed more. You could have a party thrown. And we started experimenting with having these minimum lengths of stay. And you'll soon find that if you work on that and if you proactively try to increase your direct bookings, if you talk to your guests and you do some outbound, whether it's by talking to local businesses or going to construction sites and giving out leaflets to builders, then you can start to fill up your calendar with a lot more lucrative bookings. So just to wrap up, sorry, I've been talking for a while now. I really want to underline the importance of being very careful about not just looking at filling your calendar and achieving the high occupancy, but focusing on the bottom line profitability of your units and looking at the long-term success of your business, which obviously depends on the success of owners you might be managing for as well, and ensuring that you're not equating occupancy or even revenue to profitability in your head. If you found this video useful and you'd like to learn more tips and tricks into how to grow your hospitality business, then feel free to subscribe to our channel on YouTube and to follow us on social media. Our handle is Zeevou on all the main social media.